Myth number one, there's lots of forest, so there must be lots of timber. Here's the reality. Seeing trees is not the same as having merchantable timber. Merchantable timber means trees you can log at a profit. You can stand in the middle of some trees on the landscape and be looking at non-merchantable stands. They're too small, poor quality, too slow growing, low volume second growth, plantations that are under 40 years old, steep, inoperable terrain, forest that's too far from a mill to make it profitable, areas that are off limits to logging, like riparian reserves, wildlife buffers, retention patches, and any area that's not part of the BC Timber Harvesting Land Base, the THLB. The THLB is the part of public forests that industry is legally allowed to actually log, not the whole forest. And the fact is that much of BC's working forest, the THLB, is now a giant patchwork of logging roads, clear cuts, and young fire-vulnerable plantations. Companies don't make decisions based on what the forest looks like. They make decisions based on what they can actually log. They're shutting mills because the economically viable timber has collapsed. So when someone says there's lots of forest, the real answer is yes, there's lots of young forest and/or forest that's not economically viable. It's a combination of not enough mature, high-volume timber left to run the old system, and that what is left is not necessarily close enough to mills. According to a 2025 report, BC already degraded or deforested 18 million hectares of the provincial inventory. And 70% of all degraded forest is on the same sites that used to grow BC's biggest, highest value trees. The government and forest industry knew this fall down was coming way back in the 80s. This is a clip from a 1980 film called The Fall Down Effect by the BC Forest Service. The man talking is John Cuthbert, the chief forester of BC.
From the second crop, we will be cutting much younger trees. So the volume in the second rotation will be less per acre than from the old stockpile. That old stockpile was a bonus, a gift from nature, but we won't have it the next time around.
He told us 45 years ago, BC just didn't listen. Let's take a look at the age of some of BC's interior forests in 2020. Now, this is important because the 28 timber supply areas, the TSAs, in BC's interior represent nearly 70% of BC's allowable annual cut. In the Lakes TSA near Burns Lake, 40% of the THLB is under 20 years old, and over half of that is under 10 years old. In the 100-mile TSA, 33% of the THLB was under 20 years old. Quesnel, Kamloops, Prince George TSAs, 26% of the working forest were bare clear cuts and plantations under 20 years old. That's not the timber industry needs. That's future timber a long time away. Here's another harsh reality. A recent report about the Mackenzie Timber Supply Area and another report about the Boundary TSA show how badly the BC government overestimated timber over the past 25 years. The BC government allowable annual cut has counted stands that don't exist, that are too small to log, and too far to log economically. They used growth curves not supported by ground data, relied on plantations that don't even exist yet, and ignored regional climate stresses, meaning drought has been and will continue to be a big problem in BC tree plantations. So you can drive through a green-looking landscape and still be in a fiber-short region. Not to mention, if you're sticking to main roads, most of what you're seeing are the so-called unlogged beauty strips that industry leaves along the roads to hide the clear cuts behind them. Let's take a look at a high-elevation clear cut in the Kettle River watershed. The lighter green areas are clear cuts about 20 years old. You can see the dark areas in between that were left unlogged. If you were walking through that dark area, it would feel like a lush forest filled with mature trees. But the surrounding second growth isn't yet old enough to log. and the fragments in between are not worth logging, and they're probably riparian reserves that can't be legally logged. Here are pictures of more fragments. Let's take a peek at the film from 1980 again, where he talks about the provincial cut.
As we said earlier in the film, wood harvest rose by more than 300% between 1950 and 1980. The present harvest level is about 75 million cubic meters of wood per year.
So that makes the actual harvest level in 1950 about 19 million cubic meters. In 1980, it went up to 75 million cubic meters. In 2015, the provincial cut was 69 million. By 2023, that number had fallen to 39 million. And for 2025, it's projected to drop to around 35 million cubic meters, the lowest harvest level since the 1960s. That's not a dip, that's a collapse. It's the predicted fall down. The province still pretends the allowable annual cut is 75 million cubic meters, but they can't even hit half that because the wood isn't there. The old high-value stands are gone. What's left is smaller, steeper, drier, or further away. On the ground, loggers call what's left in many second-growth stands pecker pools. You can have a forest with little to no merchantable timber, and that doesn't run a sawmill. This myth drives half the arguments online, and it collapses once you look at the data.